Welcome to The Den, the Dark Entertainment Network. I am the Gothic Rose, and this is the Daily Dive in 5. Let's check out what fresh hell awaits us today, December 5th, 2024. Here is an update to UnitedHealthcare CEO Brian Thompson, who was fatally shot in a targeted attack in New York City. The shooter remains at large, and police are investigating potential motives, including messages found on the bullet casings. The motive behind the fatal shootings of Brian Thompson remains unclear. However, the attack appears to have been premeditated and targeted. Investigators are exploring various possibilities, including potential threats against UnitedHealthcare executives and disgruntled employees. Notably, shell casings found at the scene had the words deny, defend, and depose on them, which offer clues to the motive. And that is from a 2010 book. And that book has a lot of hatred towards the healthcare industry that actually doesn't help save lives. The NYPD did release a very clear photo of his face without the mask on, but the mask was around his neck. But according to a police officer, the gunman did a procedure on his gun with the silencer called tap, rack, and bang when the gun jammed, which proves that he was proficient in firearms. Interestingly, this took place out in the open in New York City at 5:45 a.m. as the healthcare CEO was headed towards a meeting with shareholders who apparently stepped over his body on their way into that meeting because nothing matters. And many of the families of current and retired NYPD officers woke up to the news that Anthem Healthcare is going to suspend paying for anesthesia past a certain point in your surgery. So these surgeons will have to explain why you needed more anesthesia and they couldn't get your operation done in the allotted time believed by these experts who want to save money, shareholders who want to save money on anesthesia of all things. That is barbaric. But let's hop across the country to California, where a powerful 7.0 magnitude earthquake struck off the coast of Northern California on Thursday morning, December 5th, 2024. The quake's epicenter was about 50 miles southwest of Eureka, and it occurred in a relatively shallow depth of about 6 miles beneath the Earth's surface. This earthquake triggered a tsunami warning for the coastlines of Northern California and Southern Oregon. Fortunately, the tsunami warning has since been canceled, but residents were advised to avoid hazard zones and seek higher ground as a precaution. The earthquake caused significant shaking and damage in the region, with reports of buildings and infrastructure being affected. Wow. And Governor Newsom has been briefed on that situation and is working with local law enforcement. So let's pop back over to South Korea, which I spoke about earlier in the week, and they are currently experiencing significant political turmoil following President Yoon Suk Yeol's controversial declaration of martial law, which was intended to combat what Yoon described as the anti-state and pro-North Korean forces. And this was met with immediate backlash and widespread protests. The protests have been intense, with thousands of demonstrators taking to the streets demanding Yoon's resignation. The National Assembly quickly moved to block the martial law declaration, and Yoon was forced to lift it just hours after it was imposed. Despite this, the protests have continued, which calls for Yoon's impeachment, and this is growing louder and louder. The situation remains volatile with the potential for further political instability as the country navigates this crisis. And they are not the only mass protests. If we head over to the country of Georgia, not the state in the United States, the country of Georgia, mass protests have erupted in response to the government's decision to suspend negotiations on joining the European Union. The demonstrations, which began in late November 2024, have been ongoing and have spread from the capital of Tbilisi to other cities across the country. Protesters are demanding the resignation of the ruling party Georgian Dream, accusing it of rigging the October parliamentary elections with Russian backing. The situation has become increasingly tense, with police using water cannons, tear gas, and even physical force to disperse the crowds. Several opposition leaders and activists have been arrested, and many protesters have been injured. The protests reflect a broader desire among Georgians to pursue a pro-Western path and reject Russian influence. The international community, including Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky, have expressed support for the protesters and called for the sanctions against the Georgian government. It is a critical moment for Georgia as it navigates this political crisis and seeks to determine its future. And we're going through the same thing in the United States here because we're listening to what is happening. We're listening to these cabinet picks by Donald Trump, and many people are horrified by them and do not want this. And I don't think that we should just roll over and allow democracy to be overturned in the United States, because we know on that night that there were bomb threats in certain cities, in certain polling places, only in swing states, and those bomb threats came from Russian emails. So we have our own questions here, and everyone's been very quiet about it, but I think that we are on the brink of our own sort of revolution because we need some answers, and we are not going to allow democracy to die in the United States. With that, from the den, this is the Gothic Rose. I will see you on the next episode.